75 years on, the story of the Second World War has been told and retold. The grand strategies, the heroic stands, the ultimate victory of the Allies. But history, as it's often recorded, is the story of outcomes. Less frequently do we turn our gaze to see the arc of the entire cataclysm through the eyes of the nation that set it in motion. This is an attempt to understand that perspective, not to sympathize, but to see. To trace the journey of Germany, from the intoxicating belief in its own destiny to the absolute and hollowing silence of its collapse. Our story begins not with the first shots of 1939, but with a mood. The mood of the 1930s in Germany. A nation humiliated, impoverished, and fractured. And then, a sensation of resurgence. Through carefully curated color images, we can feel the eerie power of those rallies in Nuremberg. The sea of flags, the choreographed precision, the waves of sound from the crowds. This was more than politics. It was a promised rebirth. The narrative sold to the German people was one of unity, of reclaiming lost pride, of a future written in glory. Early, rapid military successes, the blitzkrieg through Poland, the fall of France, seemed to validate this promise utterly. To many watching at home, the army appeared invincible. The newsreels showed smiling soldiers and conquered terrain. The illusion was one of momentum, of a historical force that was unstoppable. The German perspective, in these early years, was one of collective euphoria. But behind the marching columns and the triumphant speeches, the first cracks were already forming. The war machine demanded constant fuel. And in 1941, it turned east, toward the vastness of the Soviet Union. This was the pivot point. The color footage here changes character. The vibrant greens of European summer give way to the endless, muddy brown of Russian autumn, and then to a monochrome white hell. The belief in a swift victory froze solid in the snow outside Moscow. The German soldier, once a symbol of unstoppable advance, now appears in these colored frames as a figure of exhaustion, bundled against a cold for which he was never prepared. And then came Stalingrad. In the ruins of that city, the perspective shifts irrevocably. The color images of this chapter are not of banners, but of rubble. Not of confident advances, but of grim, house-to-house slaughter. The defeat there was not just a military setback. It was the first deafening echo of collapse, broadcast back to the German homeland. The propaganda film could no longer hide the truth. Letters from the front told stories the newsreels did not. Simultaneously, the war was brought home. The perspective widens from the soldier on the front to the civilian in the city. Allied bombers began their campaigns. Color footage, often rare for this period, brings a shocking vividness to the destruction. We see not grainy gray explosions, but the orange glow of firestorms consuming entire neighborhoods. Families fleeing through streets of shattered brick and dust. The home front was now a battlefield. The German perspective transformed from that of a conquering people to that of a trapped nation, enduring what they had unleashed upon others. The constant air raid sirens, the nights in cellars, the gnawing fear, this became the daily rhythm of life. As the noose tightened from both east and west, the final act unfolded in Berlin itself. The color we see in the final days is the color of flame, of dust, and of desperation. Boys and old men were pressed into service for a regime that was already a ghost. The fall of Berlin, seen from inside, was not a strategic event on a map. It was a visceral, chaotic descent into ruin. The images show not just defeated soldiers, but a society in its terminal phase. The promises of a 1,000-year Reich ended in a concrete bunker deep underground. From the German perspective, the end in May 1945 was total. It was more than a military surrender. It was a moral, political, and social void. The grand narrative of destiny lay in ashes, literally. The color footage of the immediate aftermath shows a dazed population wandering amidst absolute devastation, beginning the long, silent reckoning with what had been done in their name. The journey was complete, from the exaltation of engineered unity to the desolation of national suicide. This visual journey, rendered in color, does not simplify the past. Instead, it complicates our memory of it. It reminds us that behind the monolith of Nazi Germany was a complex fabric of human experience, of belief, fear, suffering, and profound error. To see the war through this lens is to understand the terrible, human-scale mechanics of how a nation can walk step by step from euphoria into the abyss. It is a perspective that serves not as an excuse, but as the starkest of warnings. The scars it left did not just mark the landscape of Europe, but the psyche of a people, a stain on memory that color cannot wash away, but only makes more painfully clear.